week
This meeting
we
is
are
being
celebrating
recorded.
in this context, and we thought of organizing this session today. And the very purpose of this short session, very occasional session, is that we discuss about the interrelationship between the three concepts that we are talking about. Sustainability, which is a broader concept that we often refer in the context of the intergenerational equity or intergenerational justice in terms of the green productivity or whatever the ecological resilience we are going to they are going to inherit from us. Second thing, we are also talking about adaptation. Now, when we know that climate change is already impending, the increase are the alteration and disaster settings causing higher frequency and intensities, and we have to develop adaptation in our infrastructure systems, our housing, our behaviors, our food habits, many things. How sustainability related issues are important there also. And then disasters, which we say that because of the environmental degradations, disaster vulnerability is increasing. But on the other hand, disasters also cause damage to ecosystems and the environmental sustainability. So how do we look at, for example, whenever there is a major cyclone, it uproots thousands of trees. And it is not only the loss of trees in numbers, but in fact, it is the huge damage to the carbon sequestration potential. And that actually leads to contributing more to climate change, and then leading to the changes in the patterns of the extreme weather events also. So how do we look at that? During disasters, we also see that the issues of disaster waste, many times the issues of relief waste is also there. And during disaster recovery, how do we reduce the carbon footprint of our interventions, whether it is the reconstruction or livelihood recovery or other kind of recoveries? Many disasters, for example, the industrial and chemical accidents also lead to damage to ecosystems. So this is one dimension, but other dimension is that the disaster is like a extreme shock event, often a sudden kind of thing in a short time, but that brings our journey of sustainability on a halt, or many times it draws back. So today's panel, which has wide experience dealing with the city resilience, peri-urban ecosystems, the coastal dynamics, coastal aspects, the social dynamics. Then we also have the real disaster managers who have managed disasters in the field. For example, Prushtiji, who has handled several relief operations and recovery related things also. We have the workers, the relief and other coordinators who have been on the ground during disasters. So their experience in this short session would be very insightful. And while we would not be able to discuss everything in much detail, but the purpose of this session is basically to create triggers so that our colleagues and fellows who have joined this webinar can start thinking on those lines, coming up with some good projects, coming up with some good ideas, and integrating into the thought process, planning process, and our actions. So with this few words of the kind of a context setting, I once again welcome and once again compliment from ICARS as well as ICARS IIT Roorkee and the Sphere India and the entire team to everyone, and welcome all the participants in this very important workshop. Professor Akhilesh Gupta was also supposed to join and tell a few words. Maybe he may join somewhere. He is in the meeting. Here itself on my back, some meeting is going on, but he will try to join for some time. So thank you, and over to you, Michelle, for taking the agenda forward.
Thank you, sir, for your pertinent remarks. I would now like to invite Ms. Debadrita Sengupta, Manager Humanitarian from Bal Raksha Bharat. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you, ICAS and Sphere India, for this wonderful discourse. I'm hoping that this will give us some very much needed insights that we can use in the coming days. Hello, everyone, and a warm good morning to all of you, esteemed colleagues and dignitaries on the panel and in the house. I'm a bit nervous since Prushtiji is also on the panel, and I think, he has a lot of experience and a lot of insights. Um, I have been requested to talk about the prospective sustainability of our preparedness efforts in the context of resource efficiency and sustainability in the context of DRR and climate action. Some jargons may be unavoidable, but I'll try to avoid as much as possible. I'll also try to share my deliberations as much as possible on the basis of ground level experiences. However, before I get into the actual discourse, I'd like to draw the attention of the audience to the ongoing loss and damage that India and other countries have been incurring for quite some time. And annually, if we see, it is a very noticeable figure each year, and this is rising as we see that climate crisis is very much a tangible and a visible experience, and the experiences are becoming more and more adverse each year. We can also see the rising numbers when it comes to whether it is in US dollars or INR, the rising numbers when it comes to the loss and damage figures. For example, India has faced significant economic losses due to climate related disasters in recent years. India has suffered an average annual loss of about $87 billion, approximately 7.2 trillion INR in rupees, that is, from extreme weather events such as tropical cyclones, floods, and droughts. In 2021 itself, the country experienced losses of $7.6 billion, around 630 billion rupees, due to floods and storms. Cyclone Amphan in 2020 alone caused damages worth $14 billion, about 1.16 trillion rupees. And these are not flights of fantasy. These are figures taken from articles published in creditable business magazines like Business Today. Yes, I admit that our disaster management actions, whether at the state level or at the CSO levels, are now quite well established. We are not losing as many lives as we could have given the intensity of the storms making landfall or passing by. However, the loss and damage data is continuing to increase at an alarming rate. We are losing infrastructure, including livelihood infrastructure, that compels a significant percent of our population to become dependent on the vagaries of unorganized sector, distress migration, homelessness, and child rights violations like children dropping out of school and becoming child laborers. If we see very carefully, this is only the visible and tangible loss. The indirect and implied loss is that these children, who could have been valuable human resources for our country, are losing their childhood, and with it any option they might have had of a decent livelihood opportunity or a life with dignity in future once they enter this vicious cycle. Another implied loss is that however much we had progressed in reducing the risks in this community, we just regressed back more than a couple of years. We talk about building back better and bouncing not only back but forward. The recovery is not only that of putting them back in the development curve, but it also is all about recovering the risk resilient infrastructure that we had invested in and ensure that when they are back on the development curve, they do not slide backwards again. That we do not lose those resources again, we do not lose those investments again. Now, resources are finite, and once you have used them up, they are gone. People, communities, countries have only a particular allocation of each resource that they have to find the optimum combination to identify and use for the best possible outcomes in their lives, their economy, and their society. In case the investment in the infrastructure is not risk smart, it is in a very real danger of becoming a loss and damage statistic instead of sustaining the risk reduction and leveraging part of protecting and saving lives and livelihoods. In addition, the risks we cannot do much about or anything about at this particular time, we have to learn how to live with them. In that case, also, some investment is made in adaptation exercises. Leveraging those investments can bring us future risk reduction outcomes, and so protecting investments is key to both resource efficiency and sustainability. Sustainability is also dependent on a kind of progressively identifying solutions and moving forward principle. If you've already invested resources in a particular intervention, you do not reinvent the wheel. You build on that progress, assuming it will remain intact long enough for you to do so, and go on building on the basis of past achievements. That is also how we reach the goals we envisage for ourselves, be it the Sustainable Development Goals or Sendai framework related or to any other policy framework. Goals such as Sustainable Development Goal 12, which is talking about a responsible consumption and production, and 13, which is talking about climate action, directly address the need for sustainable resource management and climate resilience. Resilience and sustainability underpins the economic and social well-being of our communities. Constant drain on invested resources means a sluggish economy. A sluggish economy implies less opportunities for skill development, decent employment, job progress, etc., which in turn implies a weak household economy that increases the vulnerability, especially among the more deprived strata, which increases their exposure to risks and stresses of extreme weather events that we all know are increasing in frequency and magnitude, leaving them with harmful avenues for coping with the effects of any crisis. Hence, it is very, very important to revitalize our risk reduction and adaptation mindset to find solutions that not only save lives but also people's infrastructure, social and economic both. One way of protecting and leveraging previous investments could be using the circular economy principle, like minimizing waste and making the most optimum use of available resources, and to ensure resources remain available for today's children to use. Another way of protecting and leveraging on investments and coming up with innovative solutions has always been working with children and youth as change agents, which has been reaffirmed time and again in different contexts, especially because any loss and damage, directly and indirectly, adversely impacts their lives more than ours, and protecting investments in resilience and ensuring they remain sustainable helps protect the children and youth. It may be an existential crisis for us, but it is also a intergenerational crisis for them. I will stop here, and I look forward to the next speakers on the panel.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing upon the impact of climate-induced extremes on the loss and damages that is incurred by countries like India every year, and specifically the impact of these events on children and resilience of the future generations. I would now like to invite Ms. Nivedita Mani, a researcher, GAG at Gorakhpur. Over to you, ma'am, for your remarks.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And first of all, thank you so much, Anilji, for inviting me to this very important webinar when we talk about sustainability. I think that's the a very pressing issue that has become not only nationally but also globally. I have few slides to share. I think I have the sharing rights. Can I? Yeah. Is this visible, Michelle? If you can confirm.
Yes, it's visible.
Thank you so much. So as Anilji was, mentioning about the role of ecosystems and especially in the peri-urban areas in his opening remarks, I think that's a very pertinent issue. At the same time, it is quite still a neglected issue in our country when we are not really talking about peri-urban ecosystems which contribute to a large extent for urban resilience. I'll be sharing some of the experiences from the from few cities in the Indo-Gangetic plains of India where GAG had been working quite a few years back. But I thought in today's discussion on sustainability, I think the issue of peri-urban ecosystems is very important, and hence I would like to present some of the thoughts on this issue. First of all, we all know this. I mean, I'm not going to go into the detail that what is the relevance of peri-urban. Peri-urban areas are basically, the transition zones between the rural and urban land uses. एंड ज्यादातर ये अर्बन फ्रिंजेस के नाम से भी जाने जाते हैं और एक ऐसे सेंटर्स होते हैं विच आर क्वाइट नेग्लेक्टेड फ्रॉम द डेवलपमेंट पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, but at the same time it plays a very significant role in lending resilience, because most of the ecosystems that are there, they lie in the peri-urban areas, which actually help in sort of buffering the floods or waterlogging, and also providing resilience to the entire city. Whether it is why I'm saying floods again, because we are located, we in Gorakhpur or in the north part of Bihar, we are in the flood affected areas basically, wherein we see a lot of problem because of flooding, and most importantly because of waterlogging, which is which stands for quite some a lengthy period of time and creates all sorts of complications. And even the open areas, the open orchard areas, that also are very helpful. They also provide the very important ecosystem services in microclimate regulation, or purifying the air, and so on. So the relevance of peri-urban is quite high, and it needs to be taken into cognizance when we talk about the larger issues of sustainability. Peri-urban areas, as I mentioned now, they play a very important connect between the rural and urban areas, but at the same time, they lack from clear-cut conceptions and concrete policies from national to local level, which is still not very clear, which is still not very deciphered when it comes to development planning. There is also a development divide that we have seen in our experience. There are clear-cut policies and programs tailored for urban areas and for rural areas, but then if we talk about peri-urban areas, it's always a confusion whether it falls into whether it falls into urban area or rural area. That confusion still exists, because of which there is a clear development divide also there. Peri-urban areas do provide resilience to cities, the buffering capacities, as I earlier mentioned. And also peri-urban areas are very important in provisioning of provisioning services of ecosystems, I would say, like the food and the goods and services to the cities. We were a few years back, I was in Hanoi for a conference, and they were informing that 90% of their eggs come from the peri-urban areas to the city of Hanoi. So that kind of an important role the peri-urban areas are playing in provisioning of food, goods, and services. But the inhabitants in the peri-urban areas, even their livelihood resilience is also very important, that we need to consider when we talk about sustainability. And peri-urban areas cannot remain forever as cities in waiting, that once they will be, taken into the urban areas, maybe for whatever reason, and then they will get the benefits of development, etc. So that's also an important aspect to be considered. And these areas are also under constant threat of, deteriorating quality of life of inhabitants, especially the poor and marginalized farmers. Peri-urban areas are also becoming dumping grounds for urban areas. All the waste, all the whatever is the solid or liquid waste is mostly dumped into the outside of cities, outside of urban areas, and the inhabitants there suffer from these kind of hazards as well. The top-down governance mechanisms, we all know, whether it has been the 73rd constitutional amendment or the 74th, has not yet fully been operational in many cities, and that's also creating a problem of governance in the peri-urban areas. Peri-urban areas are also, sort of witnessing rapid change in land use and land mafias, power relationships, and all of this is leading to a composite vulnerability of, peri-urban areas. We were studying few cities in India, in the eastern part of India, like Gorakhpur in UP, Bashirhat in West Bengal, Saharsa in Bihar, and Jorhat in Assam, where we were seeing that in the last so many years, almost, I think this is in the last 20-30 years, how the ecosystems in the peri-urban areas have deteriorated. And it is quite shocking when we look at this data, which has been sourced from Google Earth images. I mean, the source is also mentioned there, and from the Gorakhpur Development Authority city development plans and Saharsa household survey. That, for instance, in Gorakhpur itself, the 82% of the natural water bodies like ponds and lakes are encroached. There was a point in time, almost 30-40 years back, when Gorakhpur city has 108 water bodies. And today we are left with only 18, out of which only few are in a little active condition. The rest are again in the process of getting encroached with the development that's happening increasingly. Similarly, for orchards, if we see, similarly for the open areas, if we see how the percentages have come down. If we talk about the floodplain areas, we all know in Bihar, for instance, even in cities like Patna, Prushti sir is already here. I think he will agree with me that 33% of the floodplain area are converted into residential area, into concrete areas. So this kind of encroachment, which is increasingly happening on the, on the sensitive zones or floodplain areas or peri-urban ecosystem areas, that's creating more and more vulnerability for the cities. We are all seeing now how increasingly these cities are coming under floods and waterlogging. 124-hour of rainfall, whether it is Delhi, Noida, or any other place, is creating havoc for the entire citizens. People are not able to go to offices, schools are shut, and so many things. So now this is nothing that has remained on paper or only in research studies, but the impacts are very visible, and it's really high time for us now to act upon it. Talking further on this, I'm not going to go into the details of this slide, which talks about Gorakhpur city and the impacts of waterlogging, how many wards face waterlogging, and this is going on increasing actually. Just last month on the 27th and 28th of September, within 24 hours, there was more than 120 millimeter of rainfall in the city of Gorakhpur, and our office itself was closed for 2 days. We couldn't reach the office even in our own cars. So that kind of an impact now it is coming on our daily life also. The peri-urban areas also are observing a lot of changes because the green cover is reducing, the breathing spaces are also reducing. Because of the the degradation of ecosystems that's happening, there is also a disruption of livelihood patterns of those living in these areas. The heat island effect is increasing. We are all seeing how we have witnessed summers this year because of these are one of the contributing factors to it. And lack of natural drainage and storage of excess water from storm water is also leading to a lot of degradation and destructions, especially in the floodplain areas. Again, not going into the slide is basically talking about how unauthorized colonies or the active floodplain areas are being converted into built up areas, and open spaces are declining, the ecosystems are declining, and the effects and impacts we are seeing on an everyday basis now. Ecosystems, when we say it is very important for resilience, and we all know that there are 4 important ecosystem services being provided by these kind of ecosystems, with provisioning services, regulating services, cultural services, and supporting services. And I was just seeing yesterday that in the recent CBD COP that has happened 2 days back, they have launched a global ecosystems atlas. I think that's a very good starting point to have a lot of data and information at one place on the situations and on the conditions of the ecosystems worldwide. Beautiful atlas they have developed. I think that's for all of us here on this call and others also. I think that will be an important source of information when we are all working on ecosystems resilience. Some of the things that GAG tried out in the peri-urban areas of Gorakhpur is that we worked with the peri-urban small marginal and women farmers and developed climate resilient farm models, which not only enhanced their income and livelihoods, but also helped us to sort of conserve these open spaces, the agricultural lands. And one information I would like to specifically highlight here is peri-urban areas in Gorakhpur was something which was increasingly getting converted to built up area. People were selling off the land because of the frustrations in agriculture and farming, farming becoming non-remunerative and so on. With our intervention, one small bit of thing that we could change is that farmers stopped selling their land. When they saw that climate resilient agriculture is possible, it can fetch them good income, it can reduce their input cost in agriculture, thereby making the net gains in agriculture, high. And they started stopping to sell the lands basically. So that way, at least the agriculture ecosystem areas were conserved. And that is a small success that we see, and a series and a range of activities were deployed. As you can see in these pictures, we introduced multi-tier farming systems, we introduced thermocol boxing, we introduced mulching, low tunnel polyhouse, and so many things. There were so many activities that went into this, which ultimately helped in enhancing net gains and providing livelihood security to the small and marginal farmers. This is my last slide. We also worked on increasing the green cover by plantation and conservation of water bodies, which we are still continuing to do. DRG is working a lot on water ecosystems now in many parts of UP. There was, with our advocacy, there was also a restriction on land mining. We introduced the wastewater treatment systems. People could recycle, the circular economy putting in place here. We could recycle the wastewater coming out of households, and people could use it for irrigation purposes. And all this was done through people-led advocacy and community-led initiatives, basically. So this is a small example of how GAG intervened into peri-urban areas, but a lot more needs to be done right from the governance level till the implementation level. I will stop here, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for touching upon the significance of peri-urban areas in building sustainability and also sharing initiatives by GAG on climate resilient livelihoods. I would like to now invite Mr. N.M. Prusti, sir, Chief Mentor cum Director at CTD MAS. Over to you, sir, for your remarks.
Thank you, Michelle. It's very interesting to hear some of the interesting analysis done by my colleagues in the panel. I am here to share some of my thoughts, basically to reflect on how the disaster management ecosystem have evolved over the years and how we have moved from a response approach to a mitigation risk reduction approach, and how we are now progressing towards sustainability and efficient resource use in the whole ecosystem building. So I'll cite a very interesting observation that happened at my place a couple of days ago. I came to visit my grandson in Mumbai, and his birthday was celebrated just the day before. And on the day when I was giving him a bath in the tub, he created a very interesting phenomena to show me how tornadoes are made. Tornadoes get developed, and he started explaining. And I was pretty amused to see a 6-year-old child explaining tornado, and they say that this how happens, and then he talked about tsunami. So it was a surprise and for me. So that took me back to our effort some 3 decades ago when we started talking about disaster management awareness and information and knowledge building. And we used to talk about that disaster aspects must be taught in schools and awareness should be built. And my grandson very well testified that the effort has not gone waste. 30 years of 3 decades old effort, 3 decades of effort. Today we see disaster management education is pretty well mainstreamed in our school, college, university, technical institutions, and all that kind of thing that has happened. But in spite of all that knowledge building we have been able to create, but has it benefited our governance? That is a question I want to ask. We do not see the governance, the disaster knowledge ecosystem getting built into the governance system and all that. We're still we're following the traditional administrative routes and all that. We have lack of DRR professionals in the system and all that kind of thing. But still, but I'm sure one day it will happen. And this small kid, my grandson, he asked me he put me in a puzzle, and I was unable to explain him the way he can understand. He asked me that that these tornadoes and all that things that happens in the sea, and then cyclone, because he has seen storms. He says storms, cyclones are happening in the sky, and then how those two things are connected. He said that when the cyclones are happening in the sky, why the sea is getting disturbed, why the tornadoes are taking place in the sea. So he was trying to find answer in his own mind that both the things, because he has seen in the television, he has read in the picture books and all that, and he was trying to relate. So these are some of the astonishing things that is beginning to happen in our children, their way of thinking and all that. So now let me take you to the more important aspects that today's agenda is this efficient resource use. If I have to explain, if I have to put my hat into the definition of resource, I'll say that resource is not the only economic resource. Many consider resource is economic resource, but there is the resources, human resource, knowledge resource, and technology resource. And when all these resources need to be used efficiently, and so that efficiently meaning that you use less resource to get maximum output. And it is so both there are tangible dimension of it and intangible dimensions of it. So we have to see that how we built our ecosystem, that we least use of input, we can get the best outputs that happens. So in that context, I'll say that in the disaster ecosystem, disaster management ecosystem, that the studies have already shown that a dollar spent on mitigation, risk reduction, will save $10, or some people even say that it would $15 in response. And so therefore the focus has shifted. Focus is shifting, but still then the benefit is yet to accrue. So when I say benefit is yet to accrue, that how the risk mitigation, risk reduction agenda is being taken in our public system. That we know that disaster management ecosystem is a combination of multiple ecosystem: agriculture, health, environment, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. But we have budget for all that. But in those budgets, what we have kept for adaptation, what we have kept for risk reduction, we have what we have kept for capacity building, what we have kept. We have not looked at our traditional programs in the domain through the disaster ecosystem building lens. So therefore, since we are not able to see it and look at the budget, look at the provision, look at the activities, so our efficient resource use is not happening. And therefore, my plea here will be that when we talk about efficient resource use, this is where we have to see that we have adequate budget, so that our budget gets optimally used with best output. So the disaster impact becomes minimal in all the sectors if we plan it well. And when we are talking about plan it well, we have various protocols, that we have got environmental impact assessment, we have got risk assessment, we have got social impact assessment, and then we have also got that implementation management plan, and then we have got also risk audit and environmental impact audit and things like that. But these are all well done in research papers and policy papers and the frameworks, and for our discussion in the seminars and webinars and workshops and things like that, that what we are doing today. But in practice, what is happening? Like if we have put a fraction of it into the practice, what my colleague from Gorakhpur Action Group was mentioning about the water bodies vanishing, it would not have happened. And so therefore, so how we are responding to these needs? So framework, just for the sake of framework, And let me recall that our Prime Minister's principal secretary to the Prime Minister, whom we all recognize as a big thinker in disaster management ecosystem in India, and not only in India but also in the world. He has gone on record saying that risk audit is necessary and risk assessment is critical to our infrastructure planning and all that. We have to take this discussion forward. Prime Minister of India has initiated the setting up the CDRI, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, and to take the advocacy agenda the whole world, and more countries are joining to it. But how do we do this? Are we doing it enough? And if we are doing enough, then why our more and more vulnerable areas are facing disasters, and which is a perfect demonstration of our insensitivity towards the risk assessment, risk audit, risk management plans, and all that kind of thing. So therefore, if we're talking about efficient resource use, we have seen in disaster management ecosystem, we have been very successful in minimizing human casualties. That is a definitely accomplishment which the whole world is now observing as a great contribution from India. But now, on the same side, we are when we are reducing human casualties, but we are increasing the infrastructure loss, economic loss manifold. And India is a developing country, and there are many developing countries like us, and their disasters is eating away their all the resource that they generate. So that means perpetually they are going to be under debt, and perpetually they are going to remain underdeveloped or developing nation, and they will not be able to go as a developed nation because of just the climate change and disaster impact. Today, climate change has become a very, very appropriate instrument for the policymakers. They say that everything that happens, they say this is happening because of climate change. They're just not, we are not able to accept the fact that this is happening because of our inaction, our human. So many disasters are today can be very, very clearly attributed as human-induced disasters. So we need to be very sensitive to this. Our legal system is improving, our frameworks are developing, the research is happening, but while the research need to be further made robust and more informed with better data and better analysis, but the application of research into practice is then the legal system that we are making based on these research findings and the pilot demonstration proof of concepts that are being done, like GHG has been demonstrated enough times. It is not today, yesterday. For years, they have been doing it and showcasing, sharing it in public domain time and again. But how much of it is being listened? How much is being factored into the public policy? That is, I'm tempted to raise this concern in this forum, thinking that this is also a public institution, and the professors, eminent leaders here associated with this, like Professor Gupta and their other professors in the ecosystem, they will be able to take note of it, and they will make enough noise to influence the policy system and our practice. So unless we improve our practices, this efficient resource use will remain as a buzzword. We have to really see, if we want to see results in efficient resource use, we have to look at Germany, how they have created benchmarks that we will reduce the resource use by X percentage in this many years. And sector by sector they have done, and they are monitoring it sector by sector, and they are demonstrating that this efficiency resource use is taking place. But we are still in the understanding state. We are still thinking that what is this efficient resource use meaning and all that. But we have to create policies, frameworks, and put into practice. Whatever policies and processes have already been in place, that practice need to be done. So this is my submission to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing the importance of mainstreaming climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction into the development paradigm, and also bringing it down to the grassroots level implementation phase as well. I would like to now hand it over to Professor Anil Gupta, sir, to introduce our next panelist.
Michelle, we are happy that Dr. Akhilesh Gupta sir's meeting is over. And he is just right with me. And actually, we could not have his opening remarks in the beginning. So now we have this opportunity. Should I request sir to say a few words of wisdom and blessings on this occasion?
Yeah. So, sir, over to you. Thank you, Professor Gupta. Greetings to all of you, and greetings on the occasion of World Sustainability Day. The topic that has been chosen for today's discussion is very relevant, and the kind of climate change that is taking place right now and that will take in future is actually very interesting. That it creates a long-term change in terms of change in temperature, but it creates short-term changes in terms of extreme events. So therefore, the dichotomy or paradox between something which is taking place on a long term, which requires a sustainable solution over the time, and something taking place at the short duration, short term, which is extreme event, that will need another solution, that is disaster risk reduction. So this dichotomy, this is the big question that we are going to face in future. And India being a special case, because here you have a very high population density, one of the highest in the world, after Bangladesh, in certain part of India, they have a very high population density. But more importantly, we have a population, especially on the eastern part of the country, where the adaptive capacity is very low, because they have poor economic condition. So these two, high population density combined with low adaptive capacity, will be a challenge both for maintaining sustainability as well as addressing the extreme event through DRR. So this is a very interesting, and therefore the discussion needs to focus on how do we create a balance between long-term changes and the short duration events. That we, as part of the Department of Science and Technology, we had a national research group working on climate change, and I was privileged to head that group, research group. We created a national research agenda for climate change, and these are the issues that are they are being included as part of the agenda. I think this is a very high time then when the researchers, policy makers, disaster managers, and the different stakeholders, they must sit together and debate on long-term solution to these kind of changes that are going to come. Of course, there is no one type of solution that's going to come out from this. It will come out with a multi action solution. Because again, India being so diverse, eastern part and the western part, quite different. Northern part and southern part are quite different. And therefore, India as a whole, if you want any solution, this has to be segregated and location specific solution we needed. And therefore, a more, I would say, inclusive and comprehensive solution will be needed for this thing. I thank the organizers, especially Sarita, for inviting me. And I'm sure this discussion will take us forward in developing a very sustainable solution for this very important national and global issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful address. And we fully agree, as you gently explained, that how short-term and long-term both concerns are important. And disaster risk reduction is one of the prime concern nowadays. So over to you, Michelle, for taking the agenda forward. Do we have a question answer session?
Yes, sir, we do.
So if there are some questions you can have with the panelists.
Yeah, so I request all participants, if you have any questions related to the topic or what our panelists have shared, please do unmute yourself and you can ask the questions directly to our panelists or put it on the chat box. अगर आपका आज के टॉपिक को रिलेटेड कोई सवाल है सस्टेनेबिलिटी को लेकर तो प्लीज अनम्यूट कर सकते हो और ये सवाल पूछ सकते हो अपने हमारे पैनलिस्ट. I see a comment by Prita. So Prita, if you would like to elaborate a bit on your comment. I would also like
to us that we are not able to hear.
Yeah, so we do not have any questions. Yeah, we do not have any questions at the moment, but I would like to ask the panelists to give any closing remarks that they might have for today's session before we move on towards the vote of thanks, if there are no questions.
Thank you. I understand that today is a holiday, but despite of being an off day, all the panelists could agree to our request and join. In fact, we could witness Dr. Akhilesh Gupta sir also, incidentally or by chance, he has been able to join in person also. And all the speakers from different parts and excellent number of participants. So wonderful. And once again, congratulations to Sphere India team, ICAR's team for organizing this. And since sustainability is a long-term issue, and within that, when we are talking about the long-term stress, there are shock episodes also. So this discourse would certainly help understand that what are the key issues in developing the strategy in both policy level as well as in the and the way we prepared some sectoral guidelines, Michelle, you recall, for the disaster relief coordination. I think there also we will discuss that how do we integrate the concerns of sustainability. We already developed a manual on sustainability and resource efficiency concerns for DRR jointly we published. So it would also be a good insight. And ICARS is focused on the all three dimensions, that looking at integrated solutions for disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and sustainability. So there's a huge opportunity to learn from each other and to work together. So thank you very much, and have a nice day, have a nice weekend, everyone. And your support and cooperation would always be appreciated. Thank you so much. And once again, greetings.
Thank you so much, Anilji, ICARS, and Sphere India team, and everybody for having us here. And it was really insightful to be part of this webinar and look forward to the collaborations ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Hello.
much, everyone.
May I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
May I ask one question, please, if you allow me?
Yes, please go ahead, sir.
What is
Please
the
go ahead.
reason that we people are not able to stop the flood or disaster? What is the lacuna? What is the drawback? From whom?
What is the question, Michelle?
मेरा प्रश्न ये है कि आज तक हम फ्लड को, बाढ़ को या डिजास्टर को रोकने में असमर्थ क्यों हैं? ठीक है, डिजास्टर तो एक ऐसी चीज है, वो कभी भी हो सकता है, बट उसको हम सरवाइव पहले क्यों ना कर लें? जैसे इलेक्ट्रिक के मामले में है, इंडस्ट्री के अंदर ये चेकअप होना चाहिए कि उनकी जो वायर लगी हुई हैं, जो उनका फिटिंग्स हैं, वो एक्यूरेट हैं कि नहीं है, जिसकी वजह से वो सर्किट शॉर्ट कर जाता है और आग लग जाती है, हो गया डिजास्टर।
Yes, I think your point is very important and very valid actually, and that is thing that in fact we had a webinar just few days back on the reviewing or revisiting the entire discourse of the legal systems in India on DRR. And in fact, now there is opportunity for each and every state to identify which are the key disasters. So not necessarily that the national list is the absolute one. For example, the government of Jharkhand has included the elephant attack also as within the list of potential disasters. So there is a possibility, and your point is very, very important. So thank you. So thank you all the speakers, and thank you all the participants and the organizers, and wonderful, and congratulations you once again, and looking forward to the next occasional webinar on a pertinent topic. And thank you Sphere India for partnership. Thank you very much.
रिगार्डिंग फ्लड के बारे में क्या विचार है?
Thank you so much, everyone.
हर साल फ्लड आता है, हम सबक लेते हैं, उसके ऊपर क्या एक्शन होता है? आई डोंट नो, आई कांट अंडरस्टैंड। आता है, फ्लड आता है, बाढ़ आती है, हर एक शहर में आती है, लेकिन बाढ़ से रुका जाए, बाढ़ से बचा जाए, ऐसा क्या स्टेप हमें टाइमली ले लेना चाहिए? सॉरी टू डिस्टर्ब यू
सर, मुझे लगता है कि देयर इज नीड इन द इम्प्रूवमेंट ऑफ इंटर एजेंसी कोऑर्डिनेशन। मतलब बाढ़ केवल इज ए सब्जेक्ट ऑफ मल्टीपल सेक्टर्स, उसमें आपकी अलग अलग डिपार्टमेंट्स का रोल होता है, तो उन सबको एक साथ आना पड़ेगा, तभी उसमें इम्प्रूवमेंट संभव है।
थैंक यू वेरी मच।